Why is the entire foreign policy establishment suddenly holding its breath? You saw the headline. You saw the ultimatum. Donald Trump looked the Iranian regime in the eye and issued a command that sounds simple on the surface. Do not kill your protesters. Most people think this is just a soundbite. They think it's just tough talk. They are dead wrong. What you are actually witnessing is a masterfully engineered geopolitical trap, a psychological checkmate that has backed the Ayatollah into a corner with no escape. For 40 years, the script in Washington was stability at all costs. But that script just went up in flames. Here is the reality the news won't touch. The Iranian regime is now trapped in a lethal dilemma. If they shoot, they trigger economic annihilation. If they hold fire, the revolution consumes them. They are damned if they do, and deposed if they don't. Most people have no idea how fast this is about to unravel. But I'm going to show you the blueprint. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why the 40-year reign of the mullahs is ending, and what happens the day after the regime falls. Let's go! Is this the moment the dam finally breaks? You have to ask yourself, why is the entire foreign policy establishment in Washington suddenly holding its breath? Why are the usual talking heads, the ones who have managed the decline of the Middle East for 30 years, suddenly so quiet? Here is the situation. You have a theocratic regime in Tehran that has held power through blood and iron for 45 years. You have a population that is young, starving, and absolutely done with the lies. And then, you have a former, and perhaps future, president dropping a statement that looks, on the surface, like a simple warning. Do not kill your protesters. It sounds simple, doesn't it? A basic humanitarian request. But if you think that's all this is, you are missing the entire game. By the time you finish this video, you are going to understand that this wasn't just a tweet. It wasn't just a soundbite. It was a masterfully engineered psychological trap, a geopolitical checkmate that has backed the Ayatollah into a corner from which there is no escape. Most people look at the headlines and see chaos. I'm going to show you the blueprint. I'm going to show you what the insiders are whispering about in the hallways of the Pentagon, and what the panic looks like inside the compounds of the IRGC. We are watching the demolition of a 40-year-old order. And it's happening faster than anyone realizes. Let's pull back the curtain for a second. To understand why this ultimatum is so dangerous for the Iranian regime, you have to understand the Playbook. In Washington, D.C., there is an accepted way of doing things. It's a script that has been handed down from administration to administration since 1979. The script says this: stability is better than chaos. The script says, you can negotiate with the regime. The script says, if you give them money, if you give them legitimacy, they will eventually behave like a normal country. That is the lie that has governed the West's relationship with Iran for decades. We sent pallets of cash. We signed deals in Vienna. We looked the other way when they crushed their own people, all in the hopes that if we were just nice enough, the monster would turn into a pet. But Trump doesn't read that script. He threw the script in the trash. When he issued that ultimatum, do not kill your protesters, he wasn't speaking to the diplomats. He wasn't speaking to the New York Times. He was speaking directly to two groups of people: the terrified men in the bunkers in Tehran, and the millions of angry kids on the streets of Isfahan and Shiraz. And he did something that the experts said you should never do. He removed the regime's safety net. The historical pattern, to see where this is going, we have to look at where we've been. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and right now, the rhythm is deafening. Go back to 2009. The Green Movement. Millions of Iranians took to the streets. They were shouting, "Where is my vote?" They looked to the West. They looked to America. They were begging for a sign that the free world stood with them. And what did they get? Silence. The administration at the time was terrified of offending the supreme leader because they wanted a nuclear deal. They wanted a legacy achievement. So, the White House stayed quiet. They called it strategic patience. And because of that silence, the regime knew they had a green light. They unleashed the Basij militia. They opened fire on crowds. They tortured students in the dungeons of Evin prison. They crushed that movement because they knew the United States would not impose a cost. That was the lesson the mullahs learned. The West is weak. The West wants a deal more than it wants freedom. Now, fast forward to today. The dynamic has inverted. The regime is weaker than it has ever been. Their economy is in ruins. The rial, their currency, is basically monopoly money. They are selling oil at a discount to China just to keep the lights on. They have spread themselves too thin fighting wars in Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. And then, this ultimatum drops. Do not kill your protesters. Why is this a trap? Because it forces the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, into a dilemma where every choice is the wrong choice. The dilemma, let's walk through his options. You're the dictator. You're sitting on the throne. The streets are filling up. Option A, you ignore the warning. You do what you always do. You send out the motorcycles and the snipers. You start killing people. If he does that now, after this specific public red line has been drawn, he invites maximum pressure on steroids. He knows that if Trump returns, or if the current pressure escalates, the sanctions won't just be on oil. They will go after the individual wealth of the leadership. They will cut off the few lifelines they have left. He risks unifying the entire Western world against him because the human rights violation is now front and center. Option B, you listen. You hold your fire. You let the police stand back. But here is the thing about dictatorships. They survive on fear. The moment the people realize that the government is afraid to shoot, the fear evaporates. If the police don't shoot, the crowd doesn't go home. The crowd grows. A protest becomes a riot. A riot becomes a revolution. Do you see the trap? If he shoots, he destroys his economy and risks a military response. If he doesn't shoot, he loses control of the streets. He is damned if he does, and he is deposed if he doesn't. The psychology of power, this is where we have to talk about how power actually works. Not the way they teach it in civics class, but the way it works in the real world. Power is a belief system. A regime like the Islamic Republic only exists because 80 million people believe that resistance is futile. It's a psychological construct called the wall of fear. For 40 years, that wall has been maintained by brutal violence. Every time a brick fell out, they patched it with blood. But what Trump's ultimatum did was shine a giant spotlight on the cracks in the wall. By publicly commanding them not to shoot, he stripped away their sovereign impunity. He signaled to the average Iranian shopkeeper, the average student, the average mother, the world is watching. And this time, the cost of killing you might be too high for them to pay. That shift in psychology is lethal. I talked to people in the intelligence community. They analyze the chatter inside the regime. And what they are hearing right now is panic. Not the frantic panic of a burning building, but the cold, creeping dread of men who realize the math no longer works. They have stopped buying the illusion of their own invincibility. The economic reality, we cannot ignore the money. Follow the money, and you find the truth. The Iranian economy is not a normal economy. It is a mafia state. The IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, controls roughly 60% of the Iranian economy. They control the ports, the telecommunications, the construction companies. When sanctions hit, the people starve, but the IRGC usually finds a way to smuggle. But this time is different. The corruption has eaten the system from the inside out. They have printed so much money that the inflation is wiping out the middle class. The people on the streets aren't just fighting for abstract freedom. They are fighting because they can't buy meat. They can't buy medicine. They see their leaders sending millions of dollars to Hezbollah and Hamas, while their own children go to bed hungry. The ultimatum connects the economic pain to the political legitimacy. It says, your suffering is not caused by America. It is caused by a regime that would rather kill you than feed you. The geopolitical chessboard. Now zoom out. Look at the map. This isn't just about Iran. This is about the great global realignment. You have the axis of resistance. Iran, Russia, China. Iran is the gas station for China. Iran is the drone factory for Russia's war in Ukraine. If the Iranian regime falls, or even if it just destabilizes, it is a catastrophic blow to Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. Putin needs those Shahid drones. China needs that cheap, sanctioned oil. So when Trump puts the squeeze on Tehran, he is squeezing Moscow and Beijing too. The insiders in Washington, the ones who love stability, are terrified of this. They are terrified that if the regime collapses, it will create a vacuum. They are saying, better the devil we know. But the people are saying, we are done with the devil. The role of technology. There is another factor here that the 1979 revolution didn't have. Technology. In 2009, they used Twitter, now X. In 2019, the regime shut down the internet completely. They pulled the plug. It was a digital blackout. They killed 1,500 people in 3 days, and the world didn't see the videos until weeks later. But you can't hide anymore. Starlink is changing the game. Smuggled terminals are getting into the country. The splinternet is failing. The narrative monopoly is broken. When the warning, "Don't shoot the protesters," went out, it wasn't just broadcast on CNN. It was beamed onto millions of smartphones via VPNs. It bypassed the state's censors. This is the nightmare scenario for a totalitarian state. Information dominance is lost. The people know that the leadership is under pressure. The midpoint reversal. But here is where we have to be careful. Here is where the expert class usually gets it wrong, and where you need to be vigilant. You might be thinking, okay, so the regime is trapped. They're going to fold. Democracy is coming. No. That is the Hollywood ending. Real life is messy. When a wounded animal is cornered, it doesn't surrender. It lashes out. The Iranian regime has a playbook too. And their playbook for this specific situation is terrifying. They know they can't win a domestic argument. So, they will try to change the subject. How do you change the subject when your people hate you? You start a fire outside your borders. We are already seeing the signals. The activation of sleeper cells. The harassment of shipping in the Persian Gulf. The sudden uptick in nuclear enrichment rhetoric. They are preparing to hold the world hostage. They are saying, if we go down, we are taking the global energy market with us. This is the pivotal moment. We are moving from a political standoff to a kinetic reality. The ultimatum was the spark. The explosion hasn't happened yet, but the fuse is burning, and it is burning very, very fast. So what happens next? What happens when the immovable object of a religious dictatorship meets the unstoppable force of a population that has nothing left to lose? Most people have no idea how quickly this can unravel. They think in terms of years. I'm telling you to think in terms of weeks. In the next part of this analysis, we are going to look at the 3 scenarios that intelligence agencies are modeling right now. We are going to talk about the day after, what the Middle East looks like without the mullahs. And we are going to talk about what you need to do, because the shockwaves of this event will reach your wallet, your gas pump, and your country. The trap is set. The prey is in the cage. But the most dangerous part of the hunt is just beginning. Now we have to talk about the fallout. We have to talk about the part of the story the mainstream news is terrified to cover. We left off with the regime cornered. And I told you that a cornered regime lashes out. So what does that look like? And why does the blob, the foreign policy establishment, hate the fact that this ultimatum was given? The establishment's fear, you have to understand that for 30 years, the primary goal of Western foreign policy has been de-escalation at any cost. The theory was that if we just keep things quiet, the oil keeps flowing and the stock market stays happy. This ultimatum shattered that peace. It forced a confrontation. The insiders are panicking because they know the Iranian regime's countermove involves chaos. They are afraid of $150 oil. They are afraid of a wider war. But here is the truth that they won't tell you. The war was already happening. It was just happening in the shadows. It was happening through proxies. It was happening through cyber attacks. It was happening through the funding of terrorism. By bringing it into the light, by drawing a red line, the dynamic shifts from managed decline to forced resolution. Let's look at the 3 specific scenarios that are on the table right now. These are the "what happens next" models. Scenario 1. The Tiananmen option, the crackdown, the regime decides to call the bluff. They shut down the entire country. They massacre thousands. If they do this, they survive in the short term. But they become a North Korea-style hermit kingdom. The European Union, which has been soft on Iran for years, will be forced to snap back sanctions. The diplomatic bridges burn. But here's the catch. The Iranian military isn't the Chinese military of 1989. The rank-and-file soldiers in the regular army, the Artesh, are conscripts. They are the sons of the protesters. There is a very real chance that if the order comes to shoot to kill on a mass scale, the army fractures. We could see a civil war between the ideologues in the IRGC and the regular army. That is the end of the regime. Scenario 2. The Venezuela model, the slow rot. The regime doesn't shoot everyone, but they arrest the leaders. They muddle through. The protests simmer down, but never stop. The economy completely implodes. This is where the maximum pressure strategy comes in. If the U.S. enforces the sanctions rigidly, Iran cannot pay its proxies. Hezbollah stops getting checks. The Houthis run out of missiles. The sphere of influence collapses. The regime becomes a zombie, alive, but powerless. Scenario 3. The collapse, the Berlin Wall moment. This is the one nobody thinks is possible until it happens. It starts with a strike in the oil fields. Then the bazaars close. Then a division of the army refuses to leave the barracks. Suddenly, the fear breaks. The supreme leader flees to Russia. The political prisoners are released. This is the scenario the ultimatum is designed to accelerate. It empowers the people to push for the collapse. Let's pause the tactical analysis and talk about the philosophy of power for a second. This is crucial for understanding the world right now. Institutions, whether it's the Ayatollah's regime, the legacy media, or the administrative state, rely on consent. They need you to believe they are inevitable. They need you to believe they are competent. What we are seeing globally, from the populist movements in Europe to the voters in America, to the protesters in Tehran, is a collapse of that belief. The narrative is dying. The Iranian regime spent billions on propaganda. They have entire TV channels designed to brainwash the public. But a single tweet, a single viral video of a woman burning her headscarf, destroys decades of programming. Why? Because the truth resonates. The ultimatum worked because it aligned with the truth. The regime is illegitimate. When you stop buying the illusion, the illusionists lose their power. That is the lesson of this moment. It's not just about Iran. It's about the fragility of systems that are built on lies. This brings me to you. You might be watching this in Ohio, or London, or Sydney. You might think, what does a protest in Tehran have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. We are in a battle between open societies and closed systems. The axis of dictators relies on the West being asleep. They rely on us being distracted by celebrity gossip and culture wars while they secure resources and territory. When the Iranian people stand up, they are fighting the same battle for human agency that we fight when we demand transparency from our own governments. Skepticism is the oxygen of democracy. The skepticism of the Iranian protester toward their state TV is the same muscle you use when you question your own news feed. And when a leader steps up and says, "Don't shoot," it clarifies the moral landscape. It forces everyone to pick a side. Are you with the people in the streets, or are you with the guys in the bunker? If the regime falls, or even if it just fundamentally changes, the map of the world changes overnight. Imagine a Middle East where Iran is no longer the primary sponsor of terror. Imagine the Abraham Accords expanding to include a normalized Iran. Imagine the price of oil stabilizing because the risk premium of war is removed. Imagine Russia losing its main supplier of drones. It is a geopolitical earthquake, and it is closer than you think. The expert class told you the Middle East was a quagmire that could never be fixed. They told you the only way was appeasement. They were wrong. Strength works. Clarity works. Standing with the people against the tyrants works. So here is my prediction. The regime will try to escalate. They will try to create a crisis to force a negotiation. But they have miscalculated the resolve of the new era. The people of Iran have smelled blood in the water. They know the shark is wounded. They are not going back to 2009. We are going to see a period of intense volatility. There will be scary headlines. There will be threats. But the vector is clear. The theocracy is a dinosaur staring at a meteor. The ultimatum was the flash of light in the sky. The impact is coming. This brings us back to the start. Most people have no idea what is about to happen. Now you do. You know that the silence from the regime isn't patience, it's paralysis. You know that the noise from the media is a distraction from the real structural collapse happening on the ground. You know that we are watching history in real time. Don't let the news cycle bury this story. Don't let them tell you it's just another protest. This is the end of an era. I want you to stay curious. I want you to look past the headlines. Dig into the sources. Watch the videos coming out of Iran on social media, not just what makes the evening news. If you found value in this deep dive, if you want to understand the mechanics of power and the hidden history of these conflicts, do me a favor. Drop a comment below. Do you think the regime survives this year? Yes or no? I want to see where you stand. Hit that subscribe button. We are going to be tracking this situation as it evolves, and you're going to want to be here for the updates. The world is waking up. Make sure you're awake with it. I'll see you in the next one.